You are now listening to Talk Your Jits podcast.
Welcome back to the Talk Your Jits podcast. This podcast is, as the name implies, all about Jiu-Jitsu. I'm your host, Lamar Smith, and today's guest is a black belt who trains at Octa BJJ, located in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Gale.
Thank you very much. Hey, thanks very much, Lamar, for inviting me on the podcast. Really excited to do this today.
Man, thank you, man. The pleasure is all mine, sir. How are you doing today?
No, it's good. You know what? It was Sunday, so Sunday I try to take it easy, but I got some training in today earlier this afternoon. So I kind of just went to an open mat, just trying to work on a little bit of no-gi, and then just kind of like prepping for the week. I got a lot of things, whether I'm with clients or I got obviously going to teach a couple classes. So week's going to be busy, but it's exciting. So.
Sounds good. Sounds good. The problems of being an adult, right?
Yeah, you know it. You can't train 2 times a day, and then you got to take time to recover and do all those things. Now, as you get into your 30s and 40s, you have to take time for your body. So, as much as I would love to train like 2 times a day, 5 days, 6 days a week, you know, between 2 kids, house, the whole thing, it doesn't work like that anymore.
Nah, not at all. But yeah, let's get it started. If you want to go ahead and formally introduce yourself again, by all means, and let's hear about your jiu-jitsu journey.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I am black belt in Mississauga, Ontario, under Hobson Mora. Was RMNU Evo BJJ. Now it's Octa BJJ up in Mississauga, Ontario. I've been training jiu-jitsu for about close to like 15, 16 years now. Kind of started at, like when we look at like Canada and Ontario, Brazilian jiu-jitsu was like still very young when I started. There weren't a lot of black belts. There was only like 3 black belts in Ontario at the time, or 3 to 4 black belts. That was kind of led by we had Gracie Humata, and then we also had Silvio Bering black belts at the time. And I was got very fortunate to get connected with a school close to where I lived. And as soon as I tried it, I was hooked. So It was one of those things. It was a very humbling experience, but it was exciting to get out and do it. And then it was like I said, it's been 15 years since I've been training, where I've had ups, downs, great training years, bad training years. You know, luckily, fortunately, never really had a major injury to slow my progress or anything like that. But, you know, like anything where you have these frustrating times where you take a little bit of a break and, you know, family life gets involved and all sorts of stuff. Your career kind of gets all weird. You have to take certain side roads. So like my pathway to a black belt might have taken a little bit longer than say to typical 10 years, but it was one of those paths I still, you know, kept to the straight, where it was always like, it wasn't a question of like if, it was always when. Really, it was always going to happen. It was just slowly focusing on being a better competitor or a better practitioner. And then now I really focus on just being a better teacher, right? Where it's like, how do I take an individual from its infancy stages of not knowing anything and then teaching them to learn how to do certain things, and how do they progress to be that white belt to 4 stripe to blue belt, and then that blue belt for 4 stripes up into purple belt. So like those are the steps in progress that I look at as an instructor and go, okay, this is what makes me successful. Because if I can teach properly and get these people moving in the direction I was, then that's going to create a better opportunity for others.
For sure. Definitely. So what was it about jiu-jitsu? Because, you know, 15 years is a long time doing the same thing over and over again. So, you know, I always like wonder, what was it about it that made you stick around this long?
Yeah. I mean, I think like anything, like when I first started, I was kind of in a different industry. I was in the automotive industry at the time. I was, you know, you smoke, you drink, you do all sorts of things. And it kind of made me change my lifestyle more than anything. Right. So, and I always tell a story because it's pretty funny, because the first humbling experience, because I had done karate, I'd done boxing, and as much as like those sports were, challenging, they weren't that challenging. I didn't feel defeated if I ever left a class or anything like that. Like, yes, you don't have a good sparring session, you kind of move on and that's it, right? But when I did jujitsu the first time, I literally got manhandled by a girl, right? And I'm not saying it as like a bad thing or anything like that. Like, I got choked the fuck out. Like, sorry if I swear on this podcast, I apologize. You can bleep it
No,
out.
you good.
Right?
You good.
But like, I got choked like 3 times, and I didn't know how it happened. And we were always in gis at the time, and yeah, it was bad. It was like, man, I just got like, I go home, like, I think I'm like super red too, because it's like, even though I got red hair, but I'm like, because I was a smoker at the time, I could not get this person off of me, and I got choked. And it was like, this is a terrible experience. Like, I can't, I'm a child out there, right? So I'm like, okay, something's got to change. So like right there and then, it was like, take my money. Like, I bought a gi, I bought everything. Like, I'm ready to do this, right? And it was the one sport where I was so humbled at the beginning, where I'm like, okay, I got to get better, right? How can I get better? Not necessarily beat her or beat that individual. It's just like, how can I not suck at this anymore, right?
Right.
So, and never be in that same type of position I've ever been in. So that was the big like aha moment for me. But I've always looked at it as like, as long as I keep moving forward, this is something I'll always get better at. You never figure out jujitsu. That's the big
Never.
thing. I think people after their conception, it was like, you're never going to be figuring it out to everything, because it's not how it works, right? It's always evolving. People's games are completely different, and you'll come across stuff you've never seen before, and you're like, but then you're like, oh, you probably learned it at a white belt and you totally forgot, right? So it's always changing. You forget more jiu-jitsu than you know, and then you always just recycle stuff, and eventually it comes back to you. So it just helps me kind of keep humbling myself, where I'm like, I don't know everything. This is going to constantly make me study, and constantly make me, because again, you get left behind. I've taken breaks where you just kind of walk away. You stop practicing, you stop doing certain things. And like I said, I had to take a break at one point during my career, because like I'm a strength and conditioning coach. So I just kind of took me out of my realm of being able to train and practice. And what happens is you lose the game. You learn touch, you learn feel, timing. You might have the conditioning, but your conditioning sucks, and your timing's off, and nothing works, and all those things disappear. So you have to reset those expectations and reset your mind. And that's always been a good humbling experience for me. So like, even when we look at like COVID, when that happened, it was like, that was a huge break, right? And like I don't know where what the laws were like with you, but we shut down in Ontario for like almost 2 years, right? So it was all about speakeasy jiu-jitsu, right? Like, we had to like go into like gyms, and basically, whether it be like hiding and like, okay, lock the doors, turn the lights off, like, okay, let's go. And we got the training in, but again, the first 6 months, like, nobody did anything.
No, it was terrible,
right? Like, places were closed, like and again, I totally understand owners where they're like, hey, I can't take the risk on opening up my gym right now, right? And luckily, eventually some people were like, okay, you know what? Everybody's gotten vaccine, or we got this, whatever. All right, let's go. Let's train. Right. And that was a blessing, because it was like, okay, finally I can get back to doing something. But then that was still a restart. Right. You're like, oh, okay, I got to start this shit all over again. It's like, so, and it happens. But I think that's the biggest thing, is like, especially when you look at individuals where we're going from white belt to blue belt, where like blue belt's like that day and age where everybody quits, right? And they're like, I've reached it. It's like, no, like, there's still so much more to that mountain peak that you haven't even touched, and you're never going to get to the mountain, right? You're never going to hit the peak. It's just like one more. It's like those false peaks, right? You think you're here, and then you're not. You still got a way more to go, and that's okay. As long as you're okay with that journey, that's how you do it.
And I think that's what makes me so hooked to jiu-jitsu, is because it's a problem you can never solve, but you're going to try anyway.
Yeah, why not, right? Like,
it's like, I can't. I'm not going to figure this out, but let's see anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I would even like one of my training partners, Mike, who actually does the podcast on my own podcast with me. We started it over COVID, but because we were like, oh, we got to do something. I'm fucking bored, so let's do something, right? So
Right.
and he's always been like a lapel player, right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
that's fucking cheating. Fuck you and your lapel. Like, get this crap out of here, right? And I was at that point where I'm like, you know what? Rather than fighting against this, like just learn it, right? Learn how to
Mhm.
do it, and then you'll understand it more. And that's where, if you can take the humility out of it and go, okay, you know what? I just need to learn more. I need to figure this out. And you don't have to play it. You don't have to play the game. You just got to know what it is. And then how do
Right.
you break it down? Okay, cool. Now I know how I got here. How do I get out of it? Then you simplify it that way and work your way backwards. It helps your progression a lot better. So you can still play your game, but not have to start, okay, I need to add this. I need to add that. No, just understand what those techniques are.
Right. And that's been like my training going forward because with the idea of competing more, and I was like, I want to try no gi. I want to try and compete no gi. And you always hear like, no gi, you gotta watch out for leg locks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I don't necessarily play leg locks, but I still want to learn it. That way, if I get into a situation where I can finish a leg lock, I know it's there. And on the same side, if I'm in a position where I'm about to get leg locked, I know how to defend it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's basically that same analogy that you said. Like you necessarily don't have to use it, but at least learn it to be aware of it. That way, you'd be able to defend it, or be able to defend it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, so like even in the context of like nogi, so I purposely made a point of like, okay, when I'm teaching, because normally I've been always like a gi, like
Mm-hmm.
gi coaching and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, you know what? Come this like last like year and a half, I've been specifically teaching one day of no gi, and then obviously I'll do the gi, right? But again, it's not
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like I want to do more gi. It's like I need to know more in no gi, so it's forcing me to train no gi, right? Because
Yeah.
it'd been like if you're asking me like, okay, Aaron, you're gonna go gi class or no gi class? I'm like, I'm gonna go gi class, right? Because I can play my game a little bit more, whatever. But because now, and again, we look at training time as like, it's your selfish time, right? So if you only got
Yeah.
2 days to go, and it's like your wife's bugging you, you're like, okay, what day am I going to go? I'm going to go to the day I'm a little bit more comfortable with, right? That's kind of like some people's mentality, right? But I was like, okay, I'm going to force myself to learn more. I'm going to force myself to teach more in nogi. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's going to be my study time. So I'm going to teach, but I'm also going to have to actually put it into practice, explain it, understand why it works, do all that stuff. So now it forces me to do it. And actually, like now that I've been doing that for like the last year and a half, I feel so much more comfortable doing nogi, right? Where it's like I can go into these positions of leg entanglements or body locks or whatever. Am I the best at it? No, right? Because I'm still in, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
the infancy stages. But does it apply to gi training? Absolutely, because now I'm just being able to do all this stuff without any grips, and I'm still being able
Yeah.
to find control and position, and it's actually helped my game out a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm. And I felt weird, when I came up with that personally myself, because um we do strictly gi. So I was like, man, I love rolling no gi. So I'm like, okay, I need to find more time to do that. So I would like, our open mats will be no gi. And I was talking to one of our training partners, and he's like, why you start like, you really starting to fall in love with no gi so much. Like, what's up with it? And I'm like, I like no gi because I don't have to worry about grip fighting, and I don't have to burn my fingers out.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
I can roll hard this whole time. I have to focus on technique because I can't hold you down because you can't grab, skin
Mm-hmm.
or rash guards. And if I go back to gi, I still know how to use my hands. I still know how to, work lapel grips and stuff, but I don't have to hold on the whole entire match.
Yeah.
So
No.
it just teaches you how to still use your hands properly versus fighting with collars and sleeves and whatnot.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, like, I always looked at it as like, if you're, and I've been the judge of it, where it's like, oh, I'm burning my grips out, where I'm like, I'm just holding on for dear life, because going to a tournament every time, it's like the first 30 seconds is like death grips for all. Right. And
Yes.
it's just like, what
Yes.
are we doing here? This is the stupidest game plan ever. Right. And so now I'm just like, you know what? I'd rather than grabbing material, I'll use material when I need to, rather than as an essential thing, where it's just changed the way I train so much more, right? But I think it's because it helps too, because we're fortunate. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 black belt instructors that I've worked with for the last now 8 years. That one is primarily a no-gi guy, and the other one's a gi guy. So I get that contrast of both, seeing both as one of their black belts, so I can see the differences, but then I can also lean towards one or the other if I need to have a question or things like that. And that's the biggest thing, because like, even if as I have a black belt, I'm still a student of the game. I'm still learning. I don't know anything really.
Right.
I just know more than the brown belt, and I might know more than the purple belt. But I've just been on the mats longer. I don't really necessarily know more.
Right.
So.
Right. Yes, and yeah, my it's just like, that's like the conversations I have with my instructor, because fortunately we work together, so we'll talk about the previous classes or something we saw online, and just to sit there and like pick his brain, and you can still see the stuff that he's still learning, even as a doing this plus 10 years, and he's still learning, he's still evolving his game. We'll be like, sitting around and like, hey, let's just go work something real quick. And I was looking at this and da 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 da. So we're like in the middle of his office, working, hand fighting and stuff. But yeah, man, like you always, like I said, like back to what we were saying, you're always learning jiu-jitsu no matter what stage of the game you're in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So now do you compete?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you. Like the last time I competed was 2019, and that was just because of a series of, like, again, COVID was a big one, so we didn't have tournaments for like literally 2 years, and so travel was a big pain in the ass, because I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old at the time that is now 4 and 7. So at that point in time, it's been a little crazy, right? So to get out, because we would have to leave the country, right? There was no competition in Canada for the longest time. So that just slowly started getting back. So now, obviously, because now things are good, I'm, like I said, knock on wood, healthy. My plan is, obviously, we have a series of competitions over the next month, and then 2 months over here in Ontario. So I'm planning on doing a no-gi competition. I'm planning on doing a gi competition, which is kind of get me back in the game, as they say. But even though I'm 40 years old now, so I'll be going into the Masters division. I'm okay with that, because now I can be like, okay, let me roll against guys that are my age, rather than trying to go up against these killers who are 20 years old and out of school and don't do anything, don't have a real job. But let them kill each other, and let me get back with all the other instructors that are still training, and we know not to reap each other, because we all got to work the next morning.
I know, right? Like, it's gonna be hard to recover from this, so let's take it easy,
That's the thing, man. It's funny, because it's like, I laugh, because like, even like going into bullpens of like the old comps that I used to do, because like I coach a lot of guys more now, right? But you be in the bullpens and you see the adults, like the young guys, just fucking, they don't talk to each other. Like, they're just so focused on what they need to do and whose head they're gonna rip off and all that. And then you see the older guys in the Masters divisions, they're all chatting with each other. Yeah, man, we're gonna go out and do this thing. This is gonna be fun. Like, and then, like, once the fight happens, like, both of them are going at it, which is great, and that's what you want, right? But you just see the mentality is just shifted, right? Where, I mean, when you get into like IBJJF, like World Masters and all that, it's a little different, right? The guys are a little bit more serious, right? But all the local tournaments, like all the Masters competitors, they're just there to have fun, really compete against themselves and see where they can go. And I think that's important, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's what's going to really help grow the sport. As much as we want to say like everybody needs to be on a fight to win card or who's number one card, I'm like, yeah, that's not feasible, right? That's not going to happen. Those are for pro athletes, and that's the pinnacle as a sport, as they say. But jujitsu in itself is so down in the bottom tiers as far as like its growth stages still. It's nowhere
Mm-hmm.
near what it could be. I mean, ADCC has really opened up that because now they are starting to do a lot more opens and they're branching out. So we're going to have an ADCC in Ottawa in April 22nd, 23rd, I think it is. So like
Okay.
that's a big open trials that they're going to do. So like when you see big organizations start to open up more contests on an international level, that's only
Mm-hmm.
going to help bring more amateur athletes into the fold. And those
Yeah.
amateur athletes will again, if they want to pursue that, they're going to become pros, and that's what's going to build jiu-jitsu. But if, the reality is still a very young sport. It's still
Yeah.
very trying to build it bit by bit, and whether it's state by state and province by province, it's still going to take a lot of time before it happens to get to that mainstream level.
Yeah. It's a very slow burn.
Yeah.
Very, very slow burn. Because I think yeah, I think it was Gordon Ryan was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they were talking about jujitsu and if it will be able to be mainstream and whatnot. And one of the points they were making, like combat jujitsu has a better chance than like traditional gi
Mhm.
jujitsu, because even you can even watch a UFC match. Us as jujitsu practitioners, if the fight goes to the ground, well, we're excited.
Mm-hmm.
But the average, fan doesn't want to see that. They want to see bloodshed. They want to see the, punches being thrown, the kicks being, kicks to the head. So
Yeah.
who's really going to sit there and watch gi jujitsu on TV
Yeah.
besides people who practice jujitsu?
Yeah. And you make a good point because, and even like when they said it, but I think, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people where it really comes down to the rule sets, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what dictates what happening in a match, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and again, this is the biggest problem where you're having is like, okay, well, Gordon Ryan wants to, and I like Gordon Ryan. These are the guys. Until he beat him, you can't say shit, right? That's the way
Right.
I look at it, right? But with Gordon Ryan, he wants to do no time limit, no gi matches, right? And in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, if you like that, it's great, right? If you want to see a 45-minute break this person down and just watch them suffer, because like you as a practitioner know what's happening, it's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, this
Yeah.
is the best thing I've ever seen. Like, this guy's making this black belt of 10 years look like he's a white belt. Like it's amazing. You see these things, right? But for
Mm-hmm.
the average person, that's like, why am I watching this for 45 minutes? Like, well,
And these two dudes hold each other.
this is what you do? Why you what? Like, really? Right? Like,
Yeah.
and you're trying to show your friends, like, yeah, look at this, and you're like, oh God, this is stupid. I gotta go for a smoke or something. Like, it's just like those are the
Right.
types of things. So rule sets really set the agenda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have a referee system where the pace is push. So if you have action, whether it's gi or no gi, obviously no gi, you're gonna get more action because there's just less stuff as far as the tacticality to operate on. So there has to be
Mm-hmm.
movement, there has to be flow. Where
Right.
gi is obviously, if you're gonna go with like IBJJF, right? For example, guys are gonna try to score points, right? So you're gonna get into these very dull based, okay, I'm just trying to score, hold, right? Like if the subs happen, it's because an individual opens up because they're down on points. Like that's what happens. These are when the submissions happens. They don't happen at a black belt level, right? They don't happen by
Right.
fluke. But in a no-gi sense, it's like, okay, so if we create the rules where it's, let's call it submission only, right? Or like
Mm-hmm.
who's number one rules, right? They have an interesting rule set too, right? Based on how they score it. that's how you're going to get more people involved, because the action has to be constant. It can't be static. If it becomes too static where you're just getting individuals trying to jockey for position, it's not going to be a good entertainment aspect for the general public to watch.
Yeah. Okay, because you're thinking if they're gonna do a card, you can think what 5 or 6 fights.
Mm-hmm.
You think people gonna sit through this like every single time of like people just tussling and barely getting to the ground for like the first 10 minutes? Nah.
No, and you know what? You have to raise the stakes somewhere, right? So I've had the opportunity to host a couple of different and commentate a couple of different like super fight cards recently. So one of the cards we did was called Ace Jiu-Jitsu Pro, right? Where it was a black belt card, and they do a Copa. And so the rule set is based on like kind of like to say an 8-man bracket, for example, right? And so if you win by sub, you get 3 points. You win by points, then it's 2 points, and if you win by a ref's decision, it's 1 point, right? So the way the bracket works is that you have these competitors fighting for points now, right? So whoever gets the most points wins this Copa, right? So, and the match is only 6 minutes. So rather than having a 10-minute black belt adult match, you drop the match time to 6 minutes. So they don't have a lot of time to work. Right. So you're constantly, and again, what's the caveat? We want individuals to go for a sub, because if they get a sub, that means they're going to be higher in the bracket standings for the Copa as the quarterfinals and the semifinals, and then the finals happen. Right. So you could wrap up this division by the finals as like a competitor if you got all subs.
Yeah. Right? I was just thinking that when you were talking. Yeah.
Right. So you could wrap this up, and the only way you lose is that maybe that person that you're at 2 points ahead of them, they can't beat you by decision, they can't beat you by points, they got to beat you by sub, right? So all you got to do is just prevent the sub, right? So there's a lot of scenarios that can happen with that to make the matches interesting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then when you look at like card length, for example, like I was at a card where it's like it was great, we kept it under 3 hours, but it was 27 matches. Right?
Oh,
that's a lot of people. Right? That's a lot of matches. And I'm like, the card was awesome. Like, but again, the only reason it was under 3 hours because we were lucky enough because we had blue belt and purple belt competitors that were going for action, and they found subs within the first 2 minutes.
Okay.
Right. So that's a lucky thing, though. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen all the time. So if you get these individuals who are like just pushing the pace and they get these subs, it's great. Keep it under 3 hours, you're ready to rock. I honestly think 2 hours is your max. That's kind of like a 2-hour jiu-jitsu match card, which is probably maybe 10 matches at most, 10, maybe 15 if I'm pushing it, right? 2 hours. Because that's taking 2 hours out of people's time to, go out, go where they need to go, buy a ticket, buy their food, go for dinner, create an evening out of it. You go over 2.5 hours, it's like, okay, is it a concert? No. Okay, there wasn't an opening act? No. What am I getting out of this? Right. So, and that's if you want to attract the hey, you want to come with me to a jiu-jitsu event tonight? Whoa, what's that about? Right. Like how you got to garner interest with the it's great for the individuals who know what we're doing. Right.
Right.
The individual doesn't know. How do you get this person to come with you to this event where they'll like it?
And eventually learn it. But
yeah, like, and they got to look at it and be like, oh man, this is weird. Like, no, if they see there's lots of action, they're like, okay, this is cool. I would go do this, or I would try it out, or I'll go to a trial class with you, or I'll go to the next card, or I'll watch it on pay-per-view or Flow or whatever. But if it's just boring and it's nothing happening and it's two guys laying on top of each other trying to fight for an advantage, right? Like, well, why did he get a point? Well, he kind of got out of that sub and then he got put back on the ground, and you got to like, oh, that's kind of stupid, right? Like, yeah, that's kind of how the rules work, though.
Yeah, because it could work because that's how people really found out about jiu-jitsu when it first, came to the UFC. No one knew what this fighting style was. It was like you just got this guy in his pajamas, walking through people. So it's like, all right, so now people want to learn this sport. So yeah, if they found a way to make it interesting to the masses, yeah, I believe jiu-jitsu could definitely be something mainstream.
There's so much potential, right? I think the beautiful thing when the UFC and like jiu-jitsu first came into play, there was like you couldn't there was like no cell phones, right? Like there was no internet, right?
Right.
So like you didn't have 50,000 other things distracting you from one thing, right? So you were either interested or you weren't, right? And then it
Right.
wasn't taking away from, oh well, you know what, I'm watching this and this is more exciting, right? It was a curiosity thing where people were like, okay, I got to go try this to see what it is, or wow, this is really exciting. And now it's just like, okay, who has the better promotion? Who can sell the best? Okay, who talks the biggest shit? It's like, who's got a great instructional? Like, hey, athletes got to make money, right? So I'm all good with instructionals, but there's just so many instructionals. Like, what's a good instructional nowadays? I don't know, right? Like, you'd have
Right.
to really pinpoint, okay, where are you getting your content from, and what works and what doesn't? Because I'm sure you've seen stuff on YouTube or whatever. I'm like, that'll never work in real life. Like it's like you see it and you're like, ah, that looks cool. I could try it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna work. You might catch it, right?
Right.
Never say never, right? Because stuff
Never say
happens.
never.
But
Because some
reality,
stuff you see it, it's like it's a one time. Like okay, like only way I'm going to get this if they don't know what I'm about to do. If they've never seen it before, that's the only way I'm going to get it. I'm not going to hit this a second time.
No, exactly, right? Like so, like it's like even like flying armbar, right? Like flying armbar is like it's fucking risky. Like I don't care what anybody says. Like it's a risky move. Have I pulled it off?
Yeah.
Yes, once in competition. Like I was down when I was. And this is a purple belt, I think. I was competing. It was the semifinals or whatever. I'm getting my ass handed to me. Right. I'm down on points. We roll out of bounds. I ended up getting the point against me because we rolled out of bounds or something like that. There's like 12 seconds left on the clock. We reset in the middle. I'm like, well, I got one shot, and that's a flying armbar. That's it. Like, there's nothing else I can do at this point, right? I'm like, okay, grab him, boom, show up for a flying armbar, hit it, tap him out. And I'm like, all right, perfect. I walked off the mat. I'm like, I didn't deserve to win that, not at all. But it worked. But it worked. So have I been able to hit it since? No, right? Like, I like in competition, right? Like I've tried it, I almost knocked myself out the last time I tried to do it. So I'm like, yeah, it's probably not the best thing to do.
Like flying anything is not recommended.
No,
not recommended at all.
Can you do things? Absolutely, right? Sometimes like the worst idea is not the best idea, but it's still an idea.
For sure. Because because like we had decided to order the last ADCC when Gordon Ryan fought Andre Galval. And we were like, yeah, we're gonna all link up at the gym, order food, and blah blah blah. We're gonna watch it, and I think we were like maybe like 2 or 3 hours in, and it still haven't got to like the main card yet. So we were like, oh, I can't, I gotta go. like this is way too long.
It's like a 6-hour day, right? So.
Because I'm looking at looking on Instagram, looking at the card. I'm like, dude, the main card don't start till like 6, and it's like 2:30. I'm like, yeah,
I gotta go. I gotta do shit.
Like, I'll catch the highlights on YouTube, man. No.
And that's the thing. They gotta like the one thing like I credit UFC. Like UFC's great, but like there's just too many cards going on anymore. So I feel the nostalgia of like building up a fight is not as good as it used to be, just because there's so many going on right now. Like I'm still a fan, but I'm not gonna buy every card I can, right? Like I'm gonna go house broke. But and I could stream them, but again, that's 3 hours out of my day, and they're so late, and it's just like, oh man, it's 1 o'clock. I gotta go to bed. But the idea is like they were really good at like getting the show rolling, right? So making sure that, okay, the fight starts at 10 o'clock. Okay, perfect. So we know from 10 o'clock to 1 a.m., that's the fight card, right? So they're kind of stick to that code of like, this is what we have their main card. You have your prelims. All right, here's your main card. Boom, there we go. We're out by 1:30. You're done. Have a good night, right? Where jiu-jitsu is, and again, like even like when was the last time you went to a tournament and you actually fought on the time that they told you were going to fight?
Never.
Never, right? They
Never.
still can't, like, and then we've been doing this shit for how long? Like 20 years. We still can't figure this shit out.
Still can't figure it out.
like, and then we got all these different companies that do like, what do you call it? Like Smooth Comp, and I'm not trying to bash on these companies or anything like that. Like Smooth Comp, the software, you know, like they're going to tell you what time you're going to fight and this and that, and like they still can't get it right, right?
Still can't get it right.
At the end of the day, it's like it's all about human. The person's got to be like, okay, you're fighting at this time. Like I'm good with a half an hour window, right? Like it's like half an hour and be like, okay, my fight is supposed to start at, let's say 1 o'clock, right? And if I get on there by 1:30, no problem. That's good.
Right.
That's a good turnaround time, right? But when it's like 1:30, gets pushed back to 2:15, then you're at 3 o'clock. It's like, what the fuck, man? Like I waited in at 1, right? Like,
right.
Like that kind of stuff drives me nuts.
Yeah. Because that's what happened at Grappling Industries.
Don't get me started with that.
God, you know, industries. I'm checking my time. It's like, oh, my time starts at let's think it's like 11:30. So I'm like, okay, cool, I got time. So I'm just kind of walking around, getting the vibe, and I think about 10 something, I hear my name get called. So I'm rushing to throw stuff on now at this point. And I'm like running back to my bag and back to the floor. And they're like, you're on mat number whatever. So I'm sitting here just for them to be like, oh, there's still 6 more matches. There's like a few more matches before you guys go on. So I'm like, why'd you call me then? Just for us not to even start on the time that we said we was going to start.
That's not even the worst of it. The last Grappling Industries that one of my students went to, okay, it was in Toronto. So it's the first tournament of the year because they're like January 30th or whatever. It's like boom, first tournament of the year. It was packed, right? Like it was like 500 people signed up. And I'm not saying that there's too many people they can't figure out, right? But they got this. They're doing gi and no gi at the same time, right? My competitor's he's on the mat, ready to go for the gi division. He's about to go, like the match is going on. He's going on right after. They're calling him for no gi in this same bracket, same division. I'm like, what are you doing? How can he be competing in gi and now all of a sudden he needs to run over there and go do no gi, right? Like 6 minutes later. Like this is a stupid problem. And it's because you overload the competitor. Like it's fine. You want to take people's money. I'm good with that. But you got to organize the system so you're not running into stupidity like this. It's a bad experience. It turns people off of competing because they're like, I don't want to sit. Yeah, they love the competition aspect. I hate sitting around.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's been the only thing I've been like weary about competing, 2 different divisions because one time my teammate competed and he was going to do both gi and no gi. So he did gi and then there was like a 3-4 hour wait time before the next division started. He's like, man, I'm not staying around for this. I'm tired. I just did 4 matches and then I have to wait another 3 hours to do my next set. Nah, forget it. No.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like it's hard because it's like you got Grappling Industries is awesome because it's like you get that round robin, right? So the idea is you're getting an individual can go out and do a bunch of different fights in their division for one day. It gets them a lot of experience. And I think that's great. I think as competitors, we need to have practice rounds, right? Nobody can be that. There's individuals who are just great competitors. They can go to that single elimination tournament. They can turn it on and they can just be awesome every single time they step on the mat. But that's not everybody, right? The general competitor needs practice. They need to understand if you've never competed in any sport before the age of 20 and now all of a sudden you're like, okay, now you're going into this lion's den of competition, you've never done any sort of competition before high school or elementary school or anything like that, and especially like single competition. I'm not talking about team, right? Team competition is
Right.
completely different to a single combat competition. Like that's a big stressor, right? Like it's big on an individual, right? Like freeze up, like competition just in general. Like you think you're in the greatest shape ever, in the first 30 seconds you're sucking wind because you don't know how to breathe properly.
Right.
So the individual when they get these different rounds of the round robin, they mean their first match sucks, but now their second match, they're like, okay, now I've gotten those nervous energy out. I'm good to go. I can go. And then you know what? They do really well in the round robin, and then they might even win the division, right? Because they got to do that rematch, and maybe they got the most points. Who knows, right? But running a gi and shogi at the same time, round robin, how do you not think that's going to cause problems? Right. Maybe, and again, I understand it's hard to be like, okay, well, you got to rent the arena for 2 days, but rent the arena for 2 days then, right? If it's going to make the experience better for the competitors and the experience is better for you as an organizer, do it. Like spend the money, right? And again, I know it's not a cheap investment to do, but it's going to make your life easier, and you're going to get more people wanting to do your tournament. Because it was, hey, I got on the mats like when the first 30 minutes, I got my 4 fights in. It was a great day. I went the next day, I did the no-gi competition. I felt great. I got my 6 fights in, whatever. It was well run. That's a good experience, right?
Yeah.
But when
definitely.
you look at, and I waited 6 hours, they called me for this. It was fucking shitty. I'm not going to do that tournament again. Fuck that, right? Like,
right.
I don't know. Like, that's my opinion with that particular one. But again, there's people who run a really good tournament too. And then you can't solve every problem, right? Shit's going to happen, but it's just got to get better.
Yeah. I mean, not, it's not bashing them because like you said,
no,
stuff happens.
I'm not bashing.
People drop out, or they just up and decide not to do the division anymore. People leave. So yeah, we get it. But it's like, man, yeah, it's just put a hold on it. Like, just get a chokehold on it, man. That's all. That's all we're asking. Because, yeah, as a person, like, because my daughter, she trains, so when I go to a tournament, she wants to go, and I would love her to be there. But she's a kid. She's not gonna sit there for like 4 or 5 hours.
No. Yeah. And how old's your daughter?
She's 7.
Yeah, exactly. She's not gonna do that crap.
But she's like the first couple of hours, she's like, yeah, and then by hour 3, she's like, Dad, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, we need to
like,
go. Like,
I'm like, me too.
Like, I haven't peed yet. I gotta go. I gotta get worth my $80 worth.
I remember I was like, Daddy ain't do his match yet, so we still gotta stay. So she's like, all right. And I'm like, I know, baby. I know. I'm sorry. But it's rough, man. But no, I mean, when it's going is good. Like if you get when the matches are going, the energy is live, it's vibrant in there, just like you feel on top of the world, even if you lose, and then you get your medal or not, and you go home.
Yeah.
So
and you know what? Like the idea of competition, and you have a really good training day. It's like, fuck, this is great. Like I had a great day. You feel good about yourself. You feel good about practice. I think the process too of like you picking a date, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna make weight for this particular day, and then I'm gonna go train 60 days away from here, and then I'm just like, you go for that competition, and if you have a really good day, talk about self-accomplishments. Like that's
man,
huge.
I'm telling you,
it's huge for competitors. It's huge for individuals in general, and they accomplish something. And even if they don't have a great day, they still get a learning experience of all that work that they've done before and how they push that forward. And I think that's a great atmosphere where it's like it provides a different type of sense of achievement compared to, like I hate to, because I'm like I said, I'm a strength conditioning coach, right? So I hear the New Year's resolutions all the time, right? And I'm like, I don't want to hear resolutions. I want to hear markers where we're going to get to. That's where we're always constantly working. So I don't, do I think New Year's is a great reset for people? I do, right? I think it's a good, because people will always gravitate to a New Year's resolution, and it's fine. But I always look at, hey, what are we going to accomplish in 30 days? What are we going to accomplish in 60 days? What's our year end goal? And then we always look back on these things and be like, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? How do we adjust? Right. And when you look at a tournament where it's like, okay, so like, so you circle a date, right? So like I've circled a couple dates for me, and it's like, now it's about the process. How do I go through this process and make sure I'm accomplishing what I want to accomplish in this particular time frame, right? And how do I feel when I get there, right? And again, I might feel really good or I might feel really shit. I don't know, right? But now it's the journey, right? And it's like, how do I? And then the next time I circle the next date, like, okay, the tournament went really well or went crap. Okay, what adjustments can I make between now and then to get better?
Yeah,
that's the game, right? And it's like,
that's the game.
And it's like, it's up to the coaches, it's up to, the competitor the competitor's got to recognize, okay, what didn't go right? And the coach's got to have the answers or kind of provide the game plan to be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. This is what happened on a bird's eye view. This is how we can make it better. Okay, cool. Let's put the game plan together. Let's work on this. Let's work on that. And if they can do that, hey man, like, those results are going to come. It's just about putting in the time. Right?
Yeah.
You can never control the draw, but you can control what you do in that time frame. Right? And if you can walk away from a competition and being like, you know what, I tried, but the chips didn't fall where they were supposed to lay today, that's okay. But I did everything I was supposed to do. That's a win.
Regardless. That's a win. A win's a win, right?
Right? And you know what? Like, I get the concept of like, people say like, you don't lose in jiu-jitsu. You either win or you learn, right? You do lose, right? Like you do.
You
right?
take L. You take L.
You go to competition. You lost. Like let's call it what it is, right? You lost. You wanted to win. You didn't win, but you're gonna get so much out of that learning experience. But you should still remember, you want to win. Yeah. Competition is about winning. So it's not saying you're a loser because you're lost. No, you won in all the different aspects of your life. Of like you were building off that. And that's how you're going to be a winner down the road.
Right. And I understand both concepts. Like, yeah, because you have to have a winner, you have to have a loser. It's just how it works. But I think with me, when it comes to like the way I look at tournaments now, it's just that extra training day. It's like a open mat or whatnot. And if I win, it's like, okay, everything that I put into place worked out. I went out there, did my job, got the subs or whatever, and I won, blah, blah, blah. But if I lose, to me, it's like, all right, let's go back and fix that. Let's get ready for the next one. Let's, take everything that we did today and, be better prepared for the next one. And that's what I did. Like my first tournament, I went out quick. Not gonna lie to you. God took me out quick. But the second tournament, I did fairly better than I did the last. So it's like, okay, well, let's keep that momentum going and improve for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Like that's the best thing you can do, right? It's just, and that's how you grow as a practitioner. That's how you grow as a competitor. But again, like those aspects those habits and everything else will affect your other parts of your life as well. Right. Whether how you do affect a project or things that you're working on for work or how you're working with your family and all that kind of stuff. It's going to make you appreciate and see the difference, how you react to certain things differently. Right. It could be like, and it could be anything. It could be, I always look at the idea of trying to make weight. Right. That was the big thing where it's like, I always had it with my athletes. Like we always make weight. No matter what. And like that was like coaches, like previous coaches, and they were all nuts. And they were like really good. They're great instructors, but like talk about loose screws and like fucking crazy. But you did not miss weight, right? Like that was a big thing. And again, they had a lot of MMA guys that they were working with. And if you miss weight, like you get fucking beat up at training. Like you do not miss weight. So that was a big thing. It's like you pick a weight division, you stick with that weight division. So if it's 155, you're going to make weight. Because again, there's so much work that goes into the training camp, right?
Yeah.
So if for jiu-jitsu, well, you just don't get to compete. But like with MMA, it's like, okay, you lose money. You lose your purse. Yeah. So let's say, I don't know, let's say the the show is 10 grand, right? And so now you have to take a 30% cut. So now it's 7 grand. So that means your coach is going to get paid less, your sponsor gets paid less, you get paid less. Like that's a big thing. Like well, actually the coach shouldn't get paid less. It's just going to get the same amount regardless, right? But you're just going to get paid less. But you don't want to miss weight. Like that's a
Right.
huge thing. And it's like all that work that you did, it's like you can stick to the game plan. You fucking fucked up before we even got there, right?
Right.
So the idea is like, okay, hey man, we pick a weight and we're gonna work. We're gonna make sure we hit weight, and that's just somebody hitting weight, for example. That might be the win, especially
Yeah.
if that practitioner is like, again, they come to class 2-3 days a week. Like that's their exercise. They were overweight. They joined jiu-jitsu because they were trying to lose weight. Now they're going to be a competitor. Perfect. Now they got to a weight they've never been to before, and they're going to compete. This is huge. We're already winning.
Big win. Yeah.
We're already winning before we even hit the mat, right? And so now, boom, they go in there. Maybe they win their first match, but now they lose their second match, whatever. They come in third place. Who gives a shit? This is a big day for that individual. This is awesome. So now how do you grow off that? Okay, cool. Yeah, so we're going to stick with the same weight. Now we're going to go for second place. Now we're going to go for first place, whatever, right? Like you snowball that effect. And good coaches know how to push the brake buttons on their athletes and their practitioners to really get the most out of them. Even if they're just a practitioner and they just want to compete to have fun. They don't have to go to IBJJF Worlds or PANS or anything like that. They can stick with a local tournament, but they can still grow from there.
Yeah, definitely. And that was me, dude. Like I told myself I wanted to be a certain weight before my tournament in January. I kept telling myself like I want to be down to 220. So I was in the gym every day. I was killing it, and daughter ended up getting a cold from school, and it spread through the whole house. And I got sick and just gained weight. So I was just like, I tried my best. I think, so when before I got sick, I got down to like 219. And then after I went back up to like 230. And luckily, since it was like not that many people in my division, I was still able to compete. But yeah, if I would have missed, if it had been like, yeah, you too heavy, or we have nobody in your bracket, then all that work could have been for nothing.
Yeah,
I'd have been more disappointed in that than losing the competition.
Yeah, I know, and that's the sucky part, right? It's just like, and then I don't know how it is where you are, especially like locals and like having enough people in your division, right? But again, the beautiful thing is that because again, in Ontario, especially for us, like again, like even Canada in general, we've been getting more people competing, which on card. So now we're getting brackets where even if it's a master's division, we're still getting 5-6 different competitors competing in those divisions because now those guys that were white belts that you were competing against for forever are all now black belts or brown belts or purple belts. So like slowly, bit by bit, there's more people in jiu-jitsu schools than ever. But now how do you keep everybody growing at the same rate? That's the biggest thing.
Right. And yeah, keeping them motivated, keeping them interested in coming back the next day. Because no one likes to get their ass kicked, but it kind of comes with the territory, right?
It comes with the territory, right? I mean, like I always look at like Janner had the perfect thing where he's like, the training room is where you're going to be training 95% of the time, right? Like that's where your wins and losses are. So it's you practicing, and the ideas of practice is you have to lose, right? You're meant to lose in practice, and you have to give up things in order. If you're winning in training every single time, it means you're not growing because you're always doing the same things over and over, and you're not putting yourself in positions to lose. So the idea is to grow in positions of where you're going to lose. So now you can, again, you give up to make up, right? And then when you get to that competition floor, that's when you need to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
The idea of the work has been done in the gym. It's not just because you're so magical on that day, right? It's you've done all the hard work in the training room, and that's where you've made all your mistakes. And now it's about just showing up for the lights at that time.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. I mean, perfectly described. Like, At the gym, that's when you give it, 200%, balls to the wall. And competition or fight time, that's when you're supposed to enjoy it.
Well,
Enjoy
exactly,
the
right?
fruits of your labor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I kept, I saw your hat and I saw your tag. So, Choking Hazard podcast. What's that all about?
Yeah, so basically, Choking Hazard Podcast is a podcast that my co-host Mike Briers, and I started in May of 2020, and
Hmm.
we had already me and him worked together at the club that's in our podcast we do not speak of. We don't give them a name. We don't give them any more publicity than they need. But but basically we'd always talked about doing a podcast. We're like, okay, man, we need to run something. We need to do something and just talk about stuff because we're just talking to shit. I'm like, we might as well do it and record it and see what happens, right? So
Right.
long story short, I'm like, okay, I'm making a podcast, right? It's like we're talking on phone all the time and like through FaceTime because we're chatting shit with Jitsu or sending stuff back and forth. And we're like, all right, we're starting a podcast. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do it all on Zoom. I don't know. We're gonna probably have nobody listen to this. That's fine. I don't care, right? We're just starting a podcast, right? So, and
Right.
that's what we did, right? So we started a podcast, and so for the first like year, it was like strictly through Zoom because basically it was COVID. Nobody was going anywhere, so we just basically grabbing different like individuals through our local community and hey, we started this thing. You wanted to be a guest, so let's just chat and shoot the shit and talk jiu-jitsu, and that's it, right? And
Hmm.
slowly, bit by bit, it manifested into this bigger community, especially where we've had opportunities to commentate a bunch of different events. I just hosted another event just recently last weekend. And then we've been, slowly bit by bit building our YouTube channel. We've had opportunities to speak with a lot of different individuals. So, like, Jordan teaches jiu-jitsu on YouTube. You ever
Yeah.
heard of that?
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
Jordan, we had Jordan on our podcast back when he had 1,000 subscribers, right? So
Wow.
like that's how early we were started it. Like, and again, I'm not trying to be like, oh, we discovered Jordan. No, Jordan did so much work, and me and him bounce ideas off each other on like how he just grew his channel to where it is. Which is he's done such an amazing job. But
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of different competitors in Canada, the U.S., and Singapore throughout the podcast, and it's something that we just want to keep doing. And like bit by bit between Mike's work, my work. Now we've doing more in-person studio, and now we're just trying to add more events, and we're trying to figure out the options for possibly running our own event as well one day.
Nice, nice, man. I'm that same way, man. When I like just random ideas starting a podcast, and I was like, "What the hell do I talk about?" And I was like, "Oh, it's talk about jujitsu. Like, just find people
Yeah,
who wants to talk about jujitsu." And I've met, some phenomenal people. People I never thought I would talk to. People from Canada and
there you go.
Singapore and just all over the place. So it's like, wow, people who don't we don't I don't know you, you don't know me, but you decide to take an hour out to talk about jujitsu.
No, absolutely, and I appreciate you inviting me on. I saw you put that post out. I'm like, just send me a location. I'll almost talk to somebody.
And this I had did a post and I was like, yeah, I did this and this and this and this and that. I'm looking for people, and no one responded. So I was like, all right, come on. So I was like, anybody want to be a guest on the podcast?
Yeah,
Just messages after messages. I'm like, all
everybody
right,
wants to talk shit.
just keep it
That's all it
simple.
is.
Everybody want to talk shit. Yeah, that's all it is. And
All it
people was
is,
like,
man. People just want to talk
what?
shit, or they just
It's
like
like,
hearing
what can we
themselves
talk
talk.
about? That too. There's like, what can we talk about? I'm like, it's jujitsu. I'm like, you talk about whatever you want to talk about. Oh, can we talk about XYZ? Sure. I don't care.
Yeah.
As long as you're not like trying to like, degrade or defile no one. But yeah, we
Yeah,
can have fun
just
and
don't try to
talk it.
cancel me. I'll be fine.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. I don't want no controversy, but whatever.
Oh yeah, and
Whatever.
you know what? Like it's funny because it's like, um, I've had the opportunity like just talk to some great people and get into like and we just talk shit too. And it's like a lot of times we've had like controversial topics that we'll bring up, and it was like obviously here like whether it's vaccines and um, just lockdowns, all sorts of stuff. And so we just like a whole bunch of different people and get different perspectives as well, right? Because again, like
Yeah.
I'll listen to anything, Rick. If it's fucking crazy, it's crazy. Plain and simple. Like it's just you can't go. If you're nuts, you're nuts, right? But it was just kind of like it was great to get different perspectives and just like I'm neither or with. I'm just like, okay, let me hear your view. Tell me about it. Like, why do you look at it that way? Okay, cool. And then when you look at the jiu-jitsu side, I think the more I look at it with the people I've talked to over jiu-jitsu, people just want to get better. They just want to train more. They just want to get better. And it's not necessarily ever about I want to be the best school person. I want to be the best competitor. It's always like, how do we grow our community more? How do we build this from where, and like I said, like we're still in the infancy stages of what it is. Like, how do you build it into something else, right? And it's even like, so right now we have what the JJIF Canadian trials going on, right? And so the JJIF is basically if jiu-jitsu is ever going to become an Olympic sport, they're the organization that's going to run it. It's their rule set. That'll be the most likely. It won't be IBJJF. It won't be. They have the prestige, but they have not figured out the idea of countries, PSOs. So when we look at like the international like federations of like sports, they're not about that. They're all about privatization of like the competitor money. We're an organization. We want our money for the organization, but we don't give a shit about the countries, right?
Right.
But when you look at like organizations, we're like, okay, we want Canada's best. We want the United States best. We want Kazakhstan's best. Okay, we're putting everybody, housing them here, and we're having the Olympics of Jiu-Jitsu. That's what they're going to be doing. So we had the organizer of the Canadian division on and talking about it, and it's like it's still in a growth stage, but it's getting closer and closer, and it might never be in the Olympics. We don't know, right? But that's how you're going to grow the sport, is through amateur. And as much as we want to say, well, pro is where everybody sees, I'm like, yeah, but that's short-lived, right? Athletes come and go, right? But amateur sport is what drives the sport in general. So it's going to be, that's what keeps things alive, right? Why does hockey exist? Well, the NHL exists because you have the GTHL, you have all these kids playing ice hockey, and those are the people who grow into these things, right? So if you neglect the amateur side, all those other sports start to fade. So the growth of amateur sports is what's going to push the sport forward.
For sure. And these jiu-jitsu phenoms are getting younger and younger, so definitely gotta get jiu-jitsu out in the world, man. Because
I was in California in August, and a week before I was supposed to go, I like busted up my MCL. Like I didn't tear it, it just like it strained it pretty good, right? And I had plans to go to AOJ, right? Like that was my plan. I'm like, I'm gonna go AOJ. I had already talked to them. I'm like, I reserved a gi, the whole deal. And as my wife and I were doing a road trip, we were taking the one from San Francisco, working our way all the way down to Casa Mesa. And basically I was like, I don't think I can do this. Because she's like, why? I'm like, because those orange belts and green belts and blue belts are going to see my black belt and they're going to try and rip my head off. Right. And I'm like, I'm not at 100%. I'm like 50%. Right. So even if I'm to say like, I'm just here for class, I'm not here to roll, they're going to try and kill me. So I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to sit this one out. Next time we come to California, I'll go back. So it's like, sorry, I'm not, it's not about ego. It's like, I just don't need my knee torn apart by a 18-year-old.
I know, right?
On vacation.
Right, on vacation. Like, right.
So
no, thank you.
That's it. I'm not saying they would ever do that, but just say.
Just right. I'd rather be safe than sorry, right?
Exactly.
So my question for you, sir, I ask everyone who comes on the show this question. Your top three, who will be your top three roles?
My top three roles that I've had the pleasure of doing.
No, that you would like to have.
Oh, that I would like to have.
The top three people you would like to roll with.
Okay. So yeah, I've had the pleasure of rolling with a lot of people. So I would love to roll with Henzo. I would even like, but I'm not like Henzo as he's old now. Like I would love to like seeing like a prime Henzo, but like I still think Henzo would kick my ass regardless, right? So like I don't even think it would be competitive. So I would love to to feel that different type of gi Henzo type of roll type feel, right? I think rolling with Gordon Ryan would be the most painful experience ever of just being absolutely make me want to quit jiu-jitsu. So I don't even know if I want to do that and go down that road. But it would be a great experience, or like somebody like Marigali and Guy would be awesome, right? And I think like as a third individual, I would probably say oh, this is a hard one. See, like I would, who would be another one? I think probably one of the Mendez brothers. If I was to ever go to California, and like probably like Guy Mendez or something like that. Like I think that would be interesting, just to see the difference. Like I've had the opportunity to roll with like GSP, Johnny Grippo.
Oh wow, okay.
A couple other individuals like Hobson Mora I've rolled with a bunch of times. It's been like Hobson Mora is just a different animal too. He's just like the guy is small, but he moves like nobody. Like unless you have somebody that size and just so low to the ground, and the way he rolls is just completely different. And he rolls every day too. Even though he's not competing anymore, he's still on the mats every single day teaching, and it's unreal. So, yeah,
that's how it's supposed to be, man. But yeah, man, unless you got anything else, if you got any questions for me, if you got anything coming up, anything with the podcast or school, by all means, man, the floor is still yours.
Yeah, no, I want to thank you very much for inviting me on. It's been a pleasure talking with you. This is a great conversation. I hope you had fun.
I did.
So, I mean, for you, like, what do you? My one question would be for you is like, where do you feel you want to take this podcast for yourself? Like, what's your kind of next steps evolution for yourself?
Honestly, dude, I would love to actually visit some of the guests I've had on the show. You know, actually, like, you know, roll with them, sit down and have like a face-to-face interview. Honestly, dude, I'll take it wherever it takes me. You know, I'm not like I don't have like a set destination for it. I just love to do. I'm doing it for the love of it. If it blows up, you know, fantastic. But I would just love to be able to, you know, Joe Rogan and shit, just to be able to sit back and just talk about jiu-jitsu every day.
No, that's awesome.
That's kind of like my goal. But mainly, I would love to eventually be able to get to a place where I can visit, you know, like I said, visit my guest, and you know, link up with them, roll with them, and just just do jiu-jitsu.
Awesome.
Talk and do jiu-jitsu. That's it.
That's good, man. No, I do hope it works out for you. Like, just keep, like I said, like we're on like 110 episodes. Like, just keep plugging away, just keep doing them, and you never know where it takes you, right? And you just have fun
never know.
We never know, right? So the only reason it gets bad is because you stop, right? So just have fun with it. I do appreciate you having me on, and if you ever end up coming to Canada, please let me know. We'll go train, and then we'll do a podcast after. I'm all for that.
Man, definitely, man. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, man. So thanks so much. I really do appreciate it. For anybody who's listening and want to listen to our podcast, it's Choking Hazard Podcast. Instagram handle is at Choking Hazard 2020. Hit us up. We're always putting up cool content and all sorts of stuff. So even though we're from Canada, we still know what we're talking about. Okay. So we got stuff up here. I'm just letting you know. Okay.
Oh man, but thanks again, Aaron.
No, man, thanks a lot, Lamar. Appreciate it.
Yep, that's the end of today's episode. I would like to thank my guest Aaron again one more time for coming on the show and blessing us with his tales and wisdom of jiu-jitsu. Please go and follow our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages to stay up to date on all future episodes. This has been Talk Your Jits Podcast. Keep rolling, keep grinding, and remember, long live jiu-jitsu. Have a great day.
We'll see you, everybody.